This is a Blairing Out with Eric Blair show today with the lead vocalist and songwriter known for his work as a member of the band 3 with Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer. Now celebrating the legacy of Keith Emerson with the 3.2 album, The Rules Have Changed. Robert Berry. How you doing, Robert?
I'm good, Eric. How are you, man?
I'm great.
Fantastic.
What was your youth like growing up in San Jose, California? Your parents owned a popular music store and they were musicians.
They were. My mom sang in my dad's band. In fact, I say I was in a band before I was born, because until about end of the 8th month, before the 9th month, my mom told the band, by the way, I'm pregnant. They had no idea. She's a very small lady. And the last month, she didn't sing in the band. So I was there on the stage, big band, playing, Frank Sinatra stuff, all that stuff, probably going, wow, digging down the horns, And I didn't think about it till like a couple of years ago after the new 3-2 album came out that, wow, I like so much stuff. Keith Emerson loved Oscar Peterson and all that. So that was part of my influence very young. So my dad had a big band. My mom was the singer. After I came along, my dad opened a music store. And, well, actually, he did it before that. He had Vox guitars and amps, which is what the Beatles used at the time. That really kind of put him over the top because he sold a lot of that stuff. And I collect a lot of that stuff now to remember my dad, in the store. So I was always around musicians. And the famous guys that would come in San Jose, we had a few, like Smash Mouth is from San Jose. Yeah. But a bunch of other people that are always around. Joan Baez lives up Mountain View a little ways. People are around, So I'd see these stars, the guys with their cute girlfriends too, and they're going, wow, this looks pretty good, Yeah. And when I was 12, some guys that were 17, seniors in high school, came into my dad's store thinking they get free Vox equipment from my dad if they had his punk kid in their band, and started me off very young with professional guys. I never had to learn how to rehearse. I never had to learn how to make a song list. I never had to know where to drive because these guys had been through all that. It got me started with pros going, oh, that's how it's done. Not, oh, we can't do that, or we can't do that, or we can't do that. That all failed. No, this is how it's done. And that got me way ahead in ways I can't even explain. There's things you learn through osmosis, maybe, just that enter you. Even with my dad's band and stuff, probably, I was seeing stuff at 4 years old that the drummer setting up his drums, oh, that's what it takes. You never think about this stuff, right? Jimmy's in there right now, setting up his drums, huge drum kit. It takes time. Never bothers me. But when you're 12 years old with your new band and your 12-year-old drummer goes, well, let's see. You're like, hey, man, come on. We want to play music. Well, I got to set up. I didn't have to think about that stuff.
The pros and cons of your time in Hush, and how did you mature from that experience?
Very good question, because Hush started as a progressive rock cover band. And we were put together by a booking agency, 2 other bands that were doing well but not big. And 2 weeks after he said, let's do this, there was a big showcase. So we learned a verse and a chorus of 6 songs, maybe it was, could have been 8. And we went to the showcase and played the verse of a chorus, and we got every gig that booking agency had. We were booked for the next year, 2 weeks into being a band. But we only knew a verse and a chorus. If you saw it, we didn't have a song list, right? So we went back and we quickly got everything together. But we really were a progressive rock cover band. Couple years into it, our guitar player that started it with us left. We got Paul Keller, who's still with me today. Big Yes fan he was. I was a big Yes fan. Bass player, big Yes fan. Drummer, big Genesis fan. So it was all the same thing. Started doing albums. We got a little record contract in Minneapolis that got us on a tour, small tour. We opened for Triumph, Black Oak, Arkansas, and a bunch of bands in the Midwest. It was really cool. After that, though, I'm going about 8 years into it. There was nowhere to go. We won a BAMI, which is a big California Music Award, Best New Album, which was really great. After that, it was like this wall. We were idling like this. We'd open for Eddie Money, God rest his soul. Now just lost him. Yeah. Open for Greg Kihn, Journey. We opened for everybody, but nothing more. So I broke it up, put together the Robert Berry Band because there was a contest that a radio station had, and they wanted me to represent the radio station. There was a bunch of Bay Area radio stations competing in the Battle of Bands. I said, broke up the band. We really want you to do it. So I put a bunch of guys together to play this music that I had in my drawer that I would never do with Hush because it was a little more grooving, rocking in a different way. I just thought, lyrics are personal. You don't want to get that kind of stuff out there. Well, we won this Battle of Bands. That album that put together from that material, my friend Rob Fowler, who was in the Robert Berry Band that I put together, sent it to all these record companies, sent it to all the magazines, and you knew what Cashbox and Record World were, and Billboard's still around. Got me a pick of the week in every one of them. I didn't even know he had done this. And a manager calls. He goes, I want to work with you on this. And Herbie Herbert, Journey's manager, is my friend. I think I can get him involved. All of a sudden, the switch went from, I can't get something happening with Hush, even though we had it really fun and did quite well as a regional favorite band. All of a sudden, it went over to like, wow, things are snowballing one by one. And even worse than that, even better than that, I guess it really is, Herbie got involved. The band was doing really well, better gigs and everything. Geffen Records. John Kalodner also knew the guy that wanted to manage me, John Espedal, an attorney in San Francisco, who also knew Herbie Herbert. And this became this little triangle of me getting doors open. I guess you'd say these guys open door, open door, open door, right? And John Kalodner had me do a song for a movie through Geffen. Herbie set up a showcase with every record label that it's me, right?
Yeah.
Every top guy from every record label is there. And Kalodner comes up after he goes, that was the best showcase by unsigned band I've ever seen. And I, really? Because we're doing that music that was in my drawer that I thought, the Hush can't do it, it's too personal again. It still excites me when I'm talking to you about it, because that place in time in my life, like I said, the switch went, and it was amazing. You start getting free equipment. You start going to New York to mix albums. You do a TV show with Cher, all this stuff. Of course, when that opportunity is over, all that stuff stops. Like that switch to goes back the other way, But at that point in time, that album opened the doors, and I got a phone call from Carl Palmer from John Kalodner's office. Hey, it's Carl Palmer. I go, yeah, right. Sure it is. Yeah. He's got a high voice. No, yeah. I like your material. I'm listening to your cassette tape. And Rob had sent cassette tapes to everybody. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. I still wasn't quite believing it. Well, I'm here with John Kalodner. Then I knew. John Kalodner was the guru. That guy was happening, I thought, this really is Carl Palmer calling me in Campbell, California, my studio. He goes, I like your voice, like your songs. I'm either thinking about we're going to do Asia a little bit differently, or we're going to start a new band. Let's meet. We actually met in New Jersey to try to start a band with Jolene Turner, great singer, and Ellen Greenwood, keyboard player for Foreigner. And it was sort of a crash and burn. It's just personalities and everything. They had their own thing going. It just didn't work. Carl said, let's bring you to England. Something going on there. So I went to England, and Don Aries, keyboard player again, played with us. And it wasn't quite, my stuff was more, Kalodner used to say, Sting meets Bryan Adams. Kind of straight rock with creativity in it. And we weren't really a whole thing based on keyboards, bass, and drums like ELP. So that didn't work. Because it wasn't working, the manager now was Brian Lane. Asia, yes, Donovan, big manager. He became my manager at that point. He goes, Steve Hackett just left GTR, and Steve Howe would like to have a conversation with you. Would like to go to his house tomorrow. The switch just went, Hush started as a Yes cover band. We played a lot of Yes stuff. Sure, yeah. I went over there, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but the door just kept opening wider and wider.
What was John Kalodner's personality like?
I would say solid as a rock. We'll start with that. He was very confident about the kind of teams he would put together, and that was his genius. He seemed to be able to find people that would just gel. It would make a band if he decided this is going to happen, or if he decided to clean up Aerosmith, the drug problems and everything, put them back together. You know what happened with that. Just blew up. It's so incredible. He instinctively had this knack for making things happen. And I was very comfortable with him and the way he treated things. He, didn't say much extra. It was kind of black and white, all genius level, like, well, we're going to do this, we need to do this, and hey, something's wrong, I need to fix this. Comes in the studio, yeah, I like that mix, That was it. kind of amazing, really, because once he was done, he disappeared. Nobody can find him. You know, I'd like to talk to him again and say, John, you gave me my start, and you really helped me so much with the Geffen Records connection, all the things, and the big album we had. But he's just gone. I don't know where he is.
Did he ever have any advice for you or talk to you about what he thought of you as a person?
You know, he didn't, but I was managed by Herbie Herbert then, which was Journey's manager, and Herbie spent a lot of time with me saying, we need to get even deeper lyrics, and, you know, need to write from the heart, and you need to do this, and give that a try, you know? And Herbie would say things like, Hush, a bunch of good-looking guys in a band playing music when people were still dancing around about. You know, I don't know how that happened. But we had a huge female audience, and Herbie would say, you know, the males are successful because bands like Rush. And Journey had a huge male audience when they were younger, a band, because it wasn't those Steve Perry songs. It was jamming Neil Sean stuff, right? Big male audience. He goes, the males are faithful. They get in their 60s, 70s, they still like the same music. The females, they get Donny Osmond, then they have babies, and they come back to Donny Osmond after the baby, you know, that kind of thing. I thought, well, that's interesting, because we always thought, hey, you bring the girls out to the gig, the guys come, right? They're going to be there too. He'd teach me things like that, and you know, putting out a Steve Perry solo album, it won't sell as much as Journey. A band has a draw, has a vibe, and that's always been important to me, that everybody, you know, gets the respect that they're due, that they're valued no matter who they are. I don't care if there's only 2 people to like one guy in the band. Those are faithful people. They'll always come and support you. So Herbie taught me stuff like that. It was very cool.
What do you remember personally about those 2 showcases, L.A. and San Francisco?
Funny enough, in L.A., I was sick. I've always had sort of ruled by the throat. You know, I'm a Taurus, which is ruled by the throat, evidently, and very susceptible to weather changing. I'm doing on this tour, I'm just really having a great time. The voice is in good shape, but I had swollen tonsils the day before that show, and I did my best to get them down, but during that show, they were still, my throat was sore. I majored in music in college. My singing teacher, I'd go and go, oh, I got a cold. I had to sing opera and all kinds of stuff, and he'd say, yeah? I said, well, I got a cold, maybe I shouldn't come to class. He goes, you don't sing with your nose. He taught me that, you sing with your vocal cords. If you're not hoarse, you're nothing down there, you know, you can sing, get in here, we're working on it. And I put my mind there and said, you know what? My tonsils are swollen, that's not my vocal cords, I have a sore throat. I'm gonna go out there, and it was really a great showcase. The other thing that happened is our light man wanted it to be the best. He brought extra lights, set it all up, and he plugged something in wrong, and he burned out all but one channel. This is before every record company in Los Angeles is going to come and see us. And his name was Paul Katamopoulos. We lost him 15 years ago now to congestive heart failure. Big guy, but boy, he worked hard. He was always covered in sweat, you know. Wonderful light man. And I looked at him and said, Paul, he was almost in tears. I said, I don't care what you do, but you make that one channel, you make it deadly. I want that to be the best one channel he ever used. And he had that one channel on a fader, and he had a plug to plug in a couple of lights for my spotlight. Nice. He made it work, and John Kalodner said, best showcase I've ever seen from an unsigned band, from a new band like this. You know, it still gives me kind of goosebumps, because poor Paul, he was devastated, but he was so dedicated to us, like the band was, and like our sound man was. I couldn't ask for a better team, like what I have going now. You know, everybody's so dedicated. You treat people right, and you get that kind of person around you, right?
During that time when you had that excursion to LA from San Francisco, were you out in the LA club scene? Were you meeting people? It was all about business and work for you.
Same way in England. You know, I can remember the manager, Carl, Keith, and I were sitting in the office. He goes, you know, Bananarama's coming to town, and they want to hang with some English guys. You guys want to go out with them? And first of all, I'm not an English guy, you know. And Keith, oh yeah, and Carl, I don't have time for that. I'm going, I'm not an English guy. Bananarama. I was always about business for me, because music, I love my wife. I couldn't have Rebecca is the best thing ever happened to me. But I've been married to music until I married her. That's been it for me, you know. I've had children and stuff. It's not that I didn't have a wife and all that, but music, and people knew. It was all about music for me. I can't help myself, and I have to go back to my mom again. Didn't quit the band till she's the end of her 8th month. I was just in the womb doing music. I could do 2 things. I can do music or I can mow lawns. I don't enjoy mowing lawns. So it's going to be music, you know.
That came from your parents, the way they raised you?
Yeah, you know, interesting thing about my mom and dad. My mom was raised very poor. Her and her sister had to work to bring money home to her mom. Their dad left them at a very young age. My dad was raised middle class because his dad was a San Jose police officer. And you know, now they make a little better money, but they didn't make great money then, but they had a little farm and stuff. So they were both very hardworking, but if, you know, when I was 9 years old, if I wanted to get a little cymbal for my drum set that cost $50, my dad would say, you know, interesting, I got a $40 job to paint that fence back there. He'd always make it possible for me to almost get what I wanted. Then I have to figure out that other $10. I'm a good horse trader now because of that, you know. And it was sort of genius level parenting that I could succeed at getting so close to my goal, but then I had to figure out, oh, well, Dad, you know, for Christmas last year, Grandpa gave me $10. He goes, well, I guess if you get the fence done, you got that cymbal, huh? He wouldn't say, great, you got that cymbal. He'd go, well, I think that adds up. He always kind of put it right behind me, supporting me, never pushing me, but always making sure I had to earn whatever I did. And my mom was the same, except for my mom, when I wanted to sing, found me the best singing teacher in town, who was the president of San Jose State University vocal department. Same with piano lessons, same whatever I wanted to do. If I wanted to be a seamstress, you know, she would have found the best seamstress. You know, why don't you take a few lessons from the seamstress here? I guess a tailor would be the right word for that. I always wanted to be my dad. He loved cars, he loved property, and he had a music store and a band. And 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I've done all that. Got a boy and a girl, I got property, love cars. But my mom made me who I am today because of her seeing what I was interested in. It could have just been building with Lego. If she saw that, she made sure that, you know, I'd be able to, oh, Mom, look at there's Lego over here, right? Oh, geez. You know, right? She, again, like Kalodner, instinct. If you follow your instincts and, you know, you let your gut kind of guide you, a lot of good things happen. A lot of people don't do that, I think. You know, they're more like, oh, gee, I don't know, I'm thinking about that. Don't think about that. Your instincts say, you know, the water's nice and cold down there, it's hot, put your foot in.
After your showcase, you had 2 options. The first with former Sammy Hagar band members Gary Peel, who went on to play with Boston, and drummer David Lauser. The second was with Carl Palmer. Yeah. How did you pick between the 2? You
know, Carl had moved things along. I have to say, when you get in a band with Carl Palmer, no matter what you do, you're successful. That guy is a dynamo. Mm-hmm. And so is Sammy Hagar. But Sammy Hagar wasn't in this band. He was off of Van Halen, right? Mm-hmm. And they were just, they came to see me in the Robert Berry Band when John Kalodner says, this guy, kind of this Sting meets Bryan Adams guy, would be the right replacement. Not that he's going to be like Sammy Hagar, but this band would be really good. John Kalodner again. I had already committed to Carl to try to do something. And of course, my roots were Yes and ELP and Genesis and all that. So I was looking forward to playing a little bit more difficult music and everything, although Alliance, which got together after I came back, is a little bit more like Zeppelin, let's say, where it's a little more expanded. It's not just straight rock songs. But I didn't really pick. It was kind of already done when they came to see me for the last little thing. Hey, man, we really want to do something. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm already committed to do that. I probably still would have gone to England because, boy, what a dream that was, right? I was only working with Carl for sure at that point. But, you know, there was that little thing. You might be John Wetton's replacement in Asia at that point, and that was my favorite band. Mm-hmm. Really, that tied it all together. That was the straight rock, the progressive, the great songs, the harmonies, everything. And Geoff Downes, one of my favorite keyboard players, was in that. Just everything for me. And if you heard a few solo albums, you'll see that I'm kind of in that middle thing where it's not really progressive, it's not Journey, it's not Yes. It's in the middle of it, you know.
The Don Airey project.
Don was in England with Carl and I. It was only a 3-piece rehearsal for a couple days, and it just didn't seem like, you know, it was going to go anywhere.
Jolene Turner, you, and Carl Palmer.
Jolene Turner and Alan Greenwood from Foreigner, keyboard player. That was in New Jersey. That was really the first time I met Carl. what I was told by Joe Lantern on the side, he goes, you know, we have this whole thing, we got a lot of good songs here, and it'd be kind of cool to play with you guys, but I'm not interested in doing your songs. So I went back to Carl. I said, you know, it was hot in the little rehearsal. We went outside. I said, Carl, he goes, what? I said, Joe just said that doesn't want to play my songs. I said, I'm okay with that, but I'm kind of following your lead. You're the man, right? He goes, watch this. He goes, thank you very much. It was great jamming with you. Out the door. And Carl's a businessman. You don't mess with Carl. He's a very nice person, and I mean, what a drummer, right? You don't get a better single-handed press roll, which is impossible to do, than Carl Palmer. But he wasn't going to mess around. It's not working, we're out the door. And of course, for me, that sort of broke my heart a little bit, because that was the first little taste of, I mean, Joe Lynn-Turner, what a singer and stuff, my God. So it was tough. I came home, no big deal, and he said, I'm going to do something in England, bring you over. So my heart was unbroken for a while, and I went over there, and of course, I said the Don Aries thing didn't work out because it just wasn't enough, you know. My songs, being Sting meets Bryan Adams, let's say, weren't keyboard worthy kind of by itself. It couldn't be done just keyboard, bass, and drums. And it kind of ended there at first.
How did you come to move from this project with Carl Palmer into working with GTR?
Because Brian Lade had become my manager and really kind of liked my American voice and my Bryan Adams meets Sting kind of combination, that meant something to them. And I believe, too, that Brian's very, very wise, and he knew that music was changing a little bit. Even Yes and everybody, they were changing, they were getting a little more accessible, let's say. And he called, and he goes, look, it's not working with Carl right now. Who knows what might happen in the future, but Steve Howe really could use you on guitar and keyboards. I'm thinking, I'm going to play guitar next to Steve. I mean, I changed to bass. I love playing bass and singing. I play guitar and keyboards. I started as a keyboard player. So I'm going to play guitar next to Steve Howe. He goes, well, you want to go to his house and meet him? I said, sure, why not, right? Yeah. And I wasn't worried about it. Carl was so gracious to me that he empowered me. He empowered my comfort zone. There's a guy that I worship, the band ELP, come on, that's musicians and musicians. But he empowered my comfort zone and made me feel qualified to talk to him even, let's say. Forget playing, I got to talk to him. Hey man, all right, good to see you. Took me out to dinner, we did all kinds of things together, you know. So meeting Steve Howe was another one of my heroes. Like, okay. Went over to his house, very cool, sweet guy, gentle soul, really very calm and everything. And I met his family, his kids running around all over the place. And he goes, you know, I've been working on these songs. Let me give you this, see what you do with it. He was testing me, right? Go, you know, come back tomorrow, see what you got. Tomorrow, okay. Give me some time to think. I worked till about 4 in that night at my flat in London that Brian had set up for me. Geoff Downes had loaned me a keyboard. I had a little drum machine, brought some guitars over with me. There was a pretty cool setup. Huge place, little old me sitting in the corner with my stuff, you know. And Steve gave me a song, I believe it was called, I should find the cassette tape, because I think it was called You're to Blame. And I went back and I thought, you know, the guy I just met, when I say, hey, Eric, you're to blame, dude. What the hell's wrong with you, right? No, he would say, I apologize. I'm probably to blame. I'm thinking, no one else to blame but yourself. That would be the gentle man I just met. So I started the song out, no one else to blame. And I rewrote all the words. And for me, what I liked, GTR, the first album, it kind of sounded like a guitar synth album because it was triggered synthesizers, MIDI. I said, Steve Howe, I mean, he's one of my favorite guitar players. This is going to have a lot of Steve Howe. And I think we could do some Yes harmonies in here. So I stuck it all in this song exactly the way I thought it should go. And it was a turning point in my life at that point, creativity and confidence-wise. Carl had given me the confidence, but all of a sudden this switch in my brain went, you know, if I give him my best work and he likes it, then we have a partnership for life that will be based on honesty and not that I'm trying to make, let's do Yes again, or let's fake this. So I just did exactly what I thought I would do with Steve Howe and what Steve Howe should be doing. I'm telling him, hey, you should be doing this. This is guitar synth stuff, forget it, right? And I brought it to him the next day. I went up to his attic and he had his 8-track recorder and all his guitar collection was, I'm a guitar junkie. And of course, his guitars are, there goes that hair on my arm again. Oh. And he hands me a Strat. I say, I got to play it, but I can't sing and play at the same time because it's really complicated. He goes, okay, gets a channel, go on his recorder, and I plunk through the guitar. I said, I made some mistakes, but I'm not making a demo here. I just want to show you. I want to give you a basis of what I've done. And then I sing it. So first of all, I'm playing guitar in front of Steve Howe for the first time. And I'd already said, we used to play Siberian Khatru in Hush. Down, down, diddle, diddle, diddle. He goes, that's not right. Like, so he already told me I was doing it wrong. Like, okay. But now I'm going to do this song. No one else to blame. I play the track. I sing it. And he says, let me just listen to it. He sits there. He's very calm and mellow and turns it off. And he looks at me. He says, no one has worked on my material like that except John Anderson. He goes, that's fantastic. And there goes that hair again. It's like, what a great thing to happen. And that was it, let's work on the song. Took me up to Devon where he used to record an album for him that he had. We worked on some stuff, played some pool. Best night's sleep I've ever had because he's a macrobiotic vegetarian, which is like eating pureed baby food. But I was afraid to eat meat in front of him because, I don't want to be a carnivore. We just started this with it, so I ate it, right? And it was really good. But the body doesn't have to work to digest that stuff. It's almost like a bird feeding another bird, It's already digested, I think. So best night's sleep on a feather mattress out in Devon. Oh, my God. It was heaven, and working with Steve Howe writing songs. That was a wonderful experience. Then the band got together. Now, you got to remember, I'm the lone American, and I'm the new kid with no track record, no hits, nothing, just been a lucky guy to work with some really good people and have people believing in me, hoping that I can get somewhere with it. So right away, the singer's like,
Max
Bacon, looking at me like, hi, well, fine, Phil Spalding, incredible bass player. Phil and I have just reconnected, by the way, which really means a lot to me because one of the best bass players I've ever worked with. But Phil, my deal with Brian Lane, he goes, what do you think about the GTR thing? I said, oh my God, I'm ready. I said, I hate to give up my whole solo career, never sing. Can I maybe sing one song? Oh yeah, no problem. Manager, yeah. He didn't tell the band or Steve Howe that I didn't want to give up everything. I'd like to sing a song in each album, just one, or a piece of one. Max, great singer, no problem. I don't need to compete, but I'd like to have my little piece. Well, Max was going to have nothing to do with that. Every time I sang a background on the demos and everything, he'd be there standing next to me twice as loud because he has a powerful voice, and I'd be saying like, and he'd be going, so you couldn't hear me. And it was a weird kind of thing because I was just feeling like if I give my best work to somebody and they like it, we really have something. If they like half of it, we really have something. Because I'm not taking ownership. Here's what I do. I know 100% you got to do it my way. I want to be a partner, a team player. And if we take part of mine and part of yours, then we really have something we're going to feel good about. Both of us have ownership in it, right? And here, Max didn't want me to have any ownership. And again, they had struggled through the first album without me. And I was in there with Steve, the golden boy. Like, maybe it would have bothered me too. So I stayed long enough to get all the first demos done. And I had a studio. I knew the equipment. I made sure everything was as good as I could make it, recording-wise, mix-wise and everything. And Steve's good at recording. It was a good band. And when they got it all done, and Arista, which was what GTR was with, said, all right, we're going to give you a budget to do the album. I said, I'm leaving. I've done all I can do. You got this great album now, you have material. The band's good. Nigel Glockler was on drums. Great. He's still a friend of mine.
From Saxon.
Yeah. He's back in Saxon now. But at that point, he wanted something different, and it was a super nice guy. And saw him 2 years ago with Saxon, come through town, still playing great, And I thought, he's just really a sweet guy. If everybody was like him and Steve, it would have been okay. Phil was a partier, and he didn't give me anything like Max did, but he was edgy, everything was drugs, It's just the way it was. And I'm a non-drug person completely. Music is my drug. You've never seen me drunk, I've never done any drugs. So I quit. I said, I'm sorry, but I don't feel like I can give 110% and get my piece of ownership in it and feeling good about it, because really, Max Bacon doesn't feel good about me doing it. So I'm ready to go home, and Brian Lane's really upset with me because I didn't tell him I was going to quit until after I quit. He goes, oh, I just got the record company, we're getting this money. And I said, I'm sorry, Brian, I guess I just wanted Steve to know that I'm just not feeling good about it, you know? And I said, I'm nobody. I haven't had a hit record. I haven't had my big break. Steve Howe was my big break. Carl Palmer's my big break. I said, but if I can't do my best work and retain that little piece of ownership in something, I don't care if you just take a couple bass notes or let me sing la la la. You know, I want to feel empowered like Carl has made me feel when I met him about everything, you know. And he was really upset. He calls me the next day. He goes, well, Keith Emerson wants to have lunch with you. And I'm, you know. Yeah. Now, I can't even tell you how worried I was about that meeting. Now, Steve was very gentle, Carl being good to me, Brian Lane, famous manager, right? But I felt that Emerson was going to be like Einstein. Well, you know, the 3 squared over times 3,200, and the light year from, I thought he wouldn't be able to complete a sentence. I think, oh my God, what am I have to have lunch one-on-one with this guy at this Palms restaurant, wherever. I was worried about it, and I'm easygoing. I don't worry about much, you know. I know that if I want to make something happen, and if I can control me making it happen, I'll make it happen for you. And so I meet him, and I'm thinking, okay, you want a glass of wine or something? I said, well, okay. You know, 2 hours later, he's the funniest guy I ever met. He's so comfortable. The greatest keyboard player ever lived, and he's humble as can be. And his last question, he goes, well, I really like your songs, and you know, Carl and I have been talking about it. If we're going to start a new band, I just have one thing. And I thought, okay. You know, what's the equation for light years to the sun? You know, right? He goes, would you mind if we went on tour doing a couple ELP songs? How humble is that for Keith Emerson to say? He should be saying, well, you know, I'm going to want to do a couple ELP songs if we make this happen. I said, yes, sir. And he's asking me if it's okay. I said, well, Keith, I could never expect you to leave that legacy. Plus, I love ELP. I love everything about it. In my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to be singing Lucky Man. How cool is that going to be? Maybe in the beginning, oh my God, you know? No. It was, you know, this really hard stuff, but it was still cool. But I said, oh, I'd be honored, and I would never expect to leave that behind. Plus the audience. They're going to go nuts. I mean, come on. You know, I run around the stage and everything. I'm a little different than Greg, and different voices different, but it's going to be rocking more. And I said, I'd be honored. He goes, good, let's do it. What a lunch that was. I'm like, okay. I was going home the next day. Flew home, told a couple of my friends, and the keyboard player for the Robert Berry Band was a Keith Emerson fanatic, Mike Weibel. We lost him to cancer, unfortunately, 10 years ago or so. Wonderful, gentle soul that played all my songs flawlessly, got every sound. He was just really on it. And he could play all that Emerson stuff that we didn't do in the Robert Berry Band. And I said, Mike, you're not going to believe this. He goes, what? I'm going to be in a band with Keith Emerson. Dead silence, right? We talked about it a lot. Then when we did our tour and rehearsed in my studio, Keith, Carl, and I brought Mike down. He got to play the big Moog and everything. And let me tell you, what that was like, I don't know, winning a race, having children, whatever. For Mike, it was like, oh my God, you know, it was. I can still see him, and he was a little skinny guy. I think he probably weighed 130 pounds, was 6 feet tall, just really thin guy. Gary Peel's the same way, by the way, but he runs every day, and he's healthy, very healthy. And I still think about that as honored and thrilled that I was to be doing this album and have my career taking off now because of Carl and then Keith. Mike Weibel was also getting this badge of honor for being now in the Keith Emerson sort of family. Really important. You know, think about the people that you, I don't want to say rub off on, but see, I feel if you do well, I do well. If I do well, you do well. And nothing that takes any of that down helps us. If you had a competing record, and we were talking right now, and your record was above mine on the charts, still, you doing well, as long as we're friends, as long as, you know, we care about each other's stuff, it helps me. Okay, well, your record's doing better than mine, but mine's right behind you. maybe the better you do, maybe you'll mention my name, you know, and oh, look at that. Until I get right up to you know number 2 and you're number 1, then maybe you won't talk about me anymore. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It really helps to be influential to your inner circle in a positive, kind of way, because it elevates everything. And that's what I felt about Mike at that point. And then, of course, in between recording and touring, the Robert Berry Band would play a gig, because now I'm working with big people, and so we get together, play a gig, and Keith was here and sit in with us. Now Mike's like playing, and there's Keith playing. He's like, oh my God, you know, great times, you know. And of course, Paul Keller was in that band too, who's in my band now.
Yeah,
so,
and then he also toured with 3. You played bass, the Steinberger.
Yes, yeah. And I'm using one now. 5-string though, totally different, new beast.
I want to touch base with you about your relationship with Geoff Downes, who he was to you, and how you met him, your first meeting with Geoff Downes.
You know, I moved to England, and I needed a keyboard. And Geoff was in Brian Lane's office. Brian Lane was his manager. And Brian said, Geoff, do you think you could loan a keyboard to Robert? He goes, sure, right, just like it's no bit like I'm his old friend. And his roadie delivered all this stuff to me. Okay. And then Brian says, you know, Geoff's working on this play called Video Killed the Radio Star, which nothing ever happened with it, but he wants you to sing. Fantastic. So I go to the studio and meet Geoff. And Geoff, what Carl Palmer used to say, still waters run deep. Because Geoff was a man of few words, but what a genius, right? And the songwriter, I don't think people understand the songwriting he did with John Wetton for Asia and stuff. They think of him as a great keyboard player. And he does the background vocal stuff. He's much more than just a keyboard player that he is. And so I went to the studio, and it's sort of an opera. So he's having me sing like this, Video Kill the Radio Star. And I called Brian Lane. I said, you know, Brian, I sang opera in college. I said, I didn't enjoy it then. I said, I kind of want to sing some stuff, but I don't, is this why I'm here? You know, is that what I'm going to do? Brian said, oh no, I'll talk to Geoff. Well, Geoff just needed some sounding board kind of stuff to do and stuff. He wasn't planning on having me be in his band or anything, you know. He produced GTR. But I got to meet him and do some things that were really cool, because he was searching for something for this play, and I was involved in it. And he was such a great talent. But again, seemed like a man of few words and very friendly. So it was a great experience. I had a couple of things I did with him. He was producing a band, Heavy Petting they were called. Kind of a Def Leppard kind of thing, you know. And I wrote a couple songs they didn't use, but I said, you know, he got me to write a few things. And that was sort of the extent of it at that point. Although he would come in the studio, he didn't have time for GTR at that point. And I was trying to push the recording, do different things. He'd come in and check it once in a while. And I was playing keyboards too in GTR, which he had done a lot on the first album. And we were just in the same circles and comfortable as one of my buddies, you know?
What, did he ever share any of the travails of Asia, or did any of that? What year was this, 86 or 87?
It was really 87.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Asia's done by then.
They had ruined the problem had ruined them. They were still gonna, the real Asia was done by then. You know, they did a lot of stuff.
I'm sorry. There was only one Asia. And honestly, the first album is the real masterpiece. What do you remember about shooting the MTV music video for the 3 song Talking About?
They built a set with these huge fans, and then they put these big wood panels on them, and the things were turning around. They were probably 50 feet around, and the fans were 4 feet big or something, and it would turn real slow at 3 of them. And I have video of all that someday I'm going to release. It's very cool. It was huge, and when you see the video, it looks huge, you know. And I just heard from, I'm not going to remember his name, that the director, producer of that, Jim Yuckage or something. Anyway, he just said, hey, I'm the guy that did that. I said, oh man, how you doing? I'm doing really good. I did lots of stuff. He took it to heart to make it as big as Emerson's sound is. And, you know, at that time, that was a more formatted song than Keith and Carl had done. You know, it's a little less progressive than Asia was. It was definitely less progressive than Emerson and Powell, but it was big and it sounded good in the radio, and the video had to match that bigness. And you know, one of the funny things was that Carl insisted on picking the girls out of the Playboy modeling book, one of these great-looking girls, and he insisted on picking up the clothes and stuff because he's good at that. He's just good, you know. He makes things happen. And the girls all said they could dance, and and they're doing their moves, and the choreographer's going, oh my God. They got there like 7 in the morning. By 4 in the afternoon, they still couldn't do it. Yeah. So you could, if you really look at that video, you can see that they're not really doing after 7 hours of rehearsal. They're still not doing it. It was kind of funny. It shouldn't have been a real big part of us anyway, so that kind of helped them not being a big part of us. Or, you know, late 80s, it might have been Whitesnake, you know, video. Funny stuff. The first edit of that came to me, and I'm trying to find the videotape, so I want people to see it now. It's almost all Emerson. And I said, you know, I called up Kalodner. I said, I don't have an ego, really. I'm love doing this. I'm really proud of it. I said, but I'm singing the song, John. It's kind of funny when, you know, the singing's going and you're singing this. I said, it just isn't right. Yeah, I'm going to find that video. I've looked everywhere. I know I have it somewhere. And he goes, you're right. You know, I'll get it changed. In 2 days, boom, new one showed up. Still had plenty of Keith's playing, and Carl, and he divided it up nice and sort of evenly. I had my quarter, and they had the other 3/4 divided between them, you know, which was fine. I just wanted to sing some important lines. It was cool for me. It was the biggest movie set and everything in SIR down in Los Angeles that I'd ever been involved in. We must have had 60 people on the crew working that, and the tracks on the camera, all just like a movie, you know. It was amazing.
How did your life change after the success of 3?
My life changed, especially with 3, because Carl said, we're going to do what Asia did. This is going to work out. And Kalodner said, this is really good. This is going to really happen. And it started to, because he had a top 10 record. Emerson, Lake and Powell didn't have a top 10 record, even though as much as I like Touch and Go, I thought, wow, that's a great song. They didn't do that. You know, it was a pretty good looking band. You know, it had all the appeal of the greatest keyboard player, the greatest drummer, new songs, a youthful look. We enjoyed each other. We jammed on stage. It wasn't all formatted. It was happening, you know. Carl said, you know, I know you like Ferraris. We should import Ferraris from England to the U.S. We only have to drive them like 10 miles, and they're considered used. I said, I'm in. Love cars, right? And I said, well, I love property too. Well, we should look at some property in London, but, you know, New York is too. It's expensive, but, you know, it's only going to keep going up. I said, oh, the others don't do that. We looked at flats in London and stuff, because I was going to be a billionaire, right? I mean, Carl's going, yes. You know, all kinds of things were going through my mind as a guy with his eyes wide open going, wow. And honestly, because I'm kind of conservative in my lifestyle from, you know, no drugs. I've been drunk 5 times maybe my whole life. I mean, I don't mind a drink, but I want to be in control of myself. I want you to be able to depend on me. That's my the whole thing, you know. And I was worried that I would never find somebody to marry that was real anymore, because I was going to be a big star, you know. Well, maybe I didn't tell you that. But Carl said, oh yeah, you know, your life's going to change. And I made $500,000 in 1 year. We all did. And I'm like, okay, my accountant said, you know, you're going to pay more in taxes this year than you've ever made in 2 years. And I'm very grounded, so none of that bothered me. I built a house with that money. First thing I said, if I have my house, my life, I'm okay. If I make it to 80 years old and get Social Security, I won't have a house payment. I'll be okay. That's the way I think, kind of, because I want to do music. That's all I care about. And it was comforting to know that all the work and all the time, and when my band used to go out after we played and they'd party and they'd go do things, and I was right down to the studio writing songs and stuff, I loved doing that. It was like, that's why I'm here, because I'm totally dedicated to that. And I spent my 10,000 hours getting prepared by the time I was 12 years old. You know, I really had a lot of hours, and I was a good engineer. I knew the equipment. You know, I'm not saying I wrote hit songs, but I knew how to write a song. I just didn't know what I know now with the 3-2 album, where you really get into your inner feelings and people connect with it in a big way.
What was it like being part of the MTV machine?
You know, it's funny, because of Keith and Carl and the respect that they got, we went into the MTV studios and the doors just opened. It was easy. And, you know, there was Nina Blackwood and Adam's there. They're all there. And Adam, I think, interviewed us. And I said, we should do something. You take the knives and stuff, and Keith should wreck something. He goes, we'll get a toy piano. They ran out, got a toy piano, and Keith's sitting there with this piano, and he goes, well, there's going to be a lot of antics on stage, and he cracks this piano, and they're all laughing, having fun. But I have to say, it was a business. I didn't see it as just being a big, like Animal House, just a bunch of fun. Like it seemed like, there's no big deal. Yeah, they're just doing what they want to do. Or even a talk show where you come on and you just chat. It didn't seem like that to me. It seemed like it was really big business, and they knew what they had. And if they still were playing videos, they might still be doing good. I don't know.
Why did 3 break apart? Now, I heard that Keith, he has a problem. He takes to heart what fans say about him, and I feel like that ended up being his downfall in a way.
You're totally right. The sad thing is really that he got 2 letters. One said, gee, you shouldn't be working this Robert Berry guy. Where's Greg Lake? We want Greg back. I understood that because I was a Greg Lake fan. I didn't care if people, they didn't want to talk to me. They took pictures. You never saw me. I didn't care about that. It just didn't matter to me. I was living the dream.
Yeah.
And I was working with 2 of the best musicians in the world, So it's all about music for me. So my reward was already there. I understood Greg Lake they wanted him back. But Keith got another letter that said, having scantily clad background singers is bad for your reputation. How dare you do that? And they weren't scantily clad. They had really nice little outfits, but they're good-looking girls, and they sang good. It was part of our sound. We had girl background singers on the album. And you're ruining your reputation. All that you built with the LP is being flushed down the toilet because you're doing this pop band, Well, we had a song called Desi La Vida. It wasn't pop. On My Way Home, which is a real heartfelt thing. We had some pretty good stuff. And then we had a hit, Talking About, that when Aerosmith and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, where grunge was coming in the 90s, that sounded really good in the radio that was all guitar. Keith could compete with that. Yes was doing it. Everybody, Genesis. We weren't as pop as Genesis, And but they criticized him. And the other thing that happened was kind of funny. When we play fairly small places, but then some of them are bigger, the 2,500-seater, 3,000-seater. And before we started, the crowd would be saying, and they were saying Keith. But Keith said, because he's let it go, they're booing us. And Carl would say, Emerson, they're saying Keith. And he'd go, oh. But he was predisposed to think that all the people, 3,000 people that bought tickets that had to see Keith Emerson as close as we are, were going to come and boo him. That's what he was thinking, And we couldn't really understand it. But we defined Keith as the greatest keyboard player that ever lived in rock and roll. And he didn't define himself by that, but that was his place in the world. I have to be the best. I have to work hard. I have a book out there of music he wrote out, all in his hand, for us when we rehearsed, that he made sure he had everything, all the synthesizer, everything. He had it all written out. He was defined as the greatest, and he was intent on living up to being just the best he could be. So when people say, you're kind of falling off the wagon here, it's not working, he took it to heart. Now, as the years went on, he never did as well as he did with 3. And what we would have achieved would have, of course, changed to be more Emerson and more Berry, maybe. We would have come meeting the minds. But at the time we did it, Kalodner had Sting meets Bryan Adams songs, and Keith had some stuff, and we put them together. Keith changed my songs into what he could do, and we worked on Keith stuff. I did lyrics and melodies and all that. So the Keith stuff was more Emerson and Palmer-ish. But my stuff was done for a whole different thing. But Kalodner said, hey, these are good songs. We've got to have them on the album. So we didn't have a chance to develop as a band. We kind of put the material together. And 3 months into it, we had a record contract. And 6 months into it, we had an album coming out. So Keith wouldn't give it a chance at that point. He said, I'm done. I had too much criticism. He goes, I can't take this chance. And unfortunately, I think over the years, really what he did, they did some ELPs, I call them sort of oldies tours and stuff, and they were fine, nothing wrong with them. but it wasn't anything new, earth-shattering in an ELP kind of way, like doing their best work. They were just sort of doing stuff, and some of it was a lot milder than 3. But Greg was there, so the fans were okay with it, you know. He never really had the success that I think he deserved before 3. He had that success then, it was great. But after 3, he didn't really get his due because it wasn't the right management, the right crew guys, the right musicians, the whole thing. He should have moved back to England where he was king and they know to handle that kind of musician. They keep him on a pedestal, they love artistic stuff, and he was living down here in Santa Monica. And you know, I hate to say it, I'm a California guy, but we're flavor of the month, right? That's what we're California music industry. I don't mean the fans, not guys like you and not guys like me, but the industry itself is flavor of the month. You can't succeed as a Keith Emerson. We are the greatest there is as a flavor of the month kind of guy. He needed to go back to, in my opinion, go back to Europe and then bring that great stuff once in a while over here on tour. But it just never happened, you know.
How did you overcome the passing of Keith Emerson?
You know, to overcome that actually has to do with the new album. Live in Boston, 3 album came out, 2015 or 16, I don't remember now, I've been doing so much. And we all signed off to let the record company do it, and Keith signed off because it was a paycheck. You go, yeah, put some money in the bank, yeah, whatever. But we all got our CD in the mail, and Keith decided, well, begrudgingly again, I'm just going to put it on, because what he'd like to do is stay home and listen to music, have a glass of wine at night. I'll put this damn 3 thing on, make sure they didn't ruin any of the sound. And he listened to it, and he called me. I just got done listening to him. He goes, Robert, we are a great band. It's like, he in his tone, what was I thinking, right? Yeah. I said, well, I always thought that, Keith. I said, but I mean, I never really, we did a lot of stuff besides that afterwards, but I never wanted to talk to him about it because I thought he was really upset about it, you know? People made him feel bad. And remember, there's no internet, right? Nothing. Everything, letter, reviews, and reviews were half good and half, well, it's not ELP, you know? So, and that's not great. And he called me so excited. So I took the opportunity. I said, what about we do a follow-up? He said, oh, maybe. I said, a record company in Italy's been asking me for 10 years. I wouldn't ask you about it. They want it. You go, yeah. Said, let me find out what the terms are. So I called the record company. I said, here's what Keith wants, right? Certain thousands of dollars. When do you want to start? They wanted it so bad. I said, well, let me talk to Keith. Keith, I got us artistic control. I got us a year to do it, and I got you this much money. And he went, you got me that much. What kind of company has that kind of money? I said, Keith, they want it to be a 3 album. They want it to be what we want it to be, but they want it to be ELP. They want it to be 3 or Asia, you know, 3. And he goes, wow, well, let's do it. So I called back the record company, and I've said this before, and if Serafino hears it, he's going to go, oh, you bastard. But I said, well, Keith agrees, but he wants another $10,000. Because Keith said, who has that kind of money? Nobody wants it anymore, you know. So I added, and he says, we're done, let's do it. Call Keith back, hey, I got you another 10 grand. He goes, you're kidding, you're so excited, right? That was a positive thing. So every time we wrote or exchanged things through emails and stuff, and he's not really good online and all that, but he sent me an old cassette tape, and we would write over the phone. We'd have a piano in this room. I could write with Geoff Downes in England. We'd put our phone up on FaceTime or whatever, you know, and play, and he'd go, no. And I'd go, oh, okay, what about if we, yeah. It's not like it used to be where you had to be in the room. You could really do things. And we'd talk at night after my recording sessions and after when Keith was alone. And we'd do these things. He was always happy. We were doing music. And he had this big paycheck coming. I never do an album for a record company unless I've written a couple songs and have them recorded to say, this is what we're going to do. So I don't want them telling me, you know, we were expecting it to sound like Deep Purple, you know, or something like that. Mm-hmm. I say, this is what we're going to do. So we had 2 we were working on. We had 5 songs written. And I had a song called This Letter I just wrote. And it was about 10 years before what Keith had called me. He goes, oh, Aaron's going to have a kid. Hey, your son, you could be a granddad. He goes, yeah, I'm not ready to be a granddad. And it had nothing to do with babies. It had to do with age, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't want to be granddad. Mm-hmm. Now, move up 10 years to when we're writing this album, and he says, I'm going to have to finish this after I play some shows in Japan and I go see my grandkids. He goes, I got to see him. And I thought, whoa, there's a change. Most important thing in his life. So we hung up the phone, and I said, wow, how do you write a song about love? We are these love songs, but it's really indescribable to write it down. It's something that is way beyond. So I wrote this letter about, what it is loving you. I never thought I would feel this, and here it is. And I was a day, maybe 2 days away from sending it to him because it was a folk song, kind of. And the end of it, I wanted him to throw in the kitchen sink and do Honky Tonk Train Blues or make all this. I just wanted to be crazy insane because that's kind of what real love is. It's something that can't be explained. It's just, wow, it's all over you, right? And Eleanor, his ex-wife, called me and said, Keith's gone. And that day, the guy I had a hit song with, that I was hoping to play somewhere with him and an award show, something. We'd do it because we had a top 10 song. My most famous friend, the guy I'd waited 27 years to do a follow-up album with, and we were really getting some great stuff. We knew what it should be, and we had this outline form. We knew. It should have happened 26 years before, but it didn't, And, one of the funniest guys, one of the most respected guys, that phone call, all gone. And I was devastated. I'm not a guy that gets depressed easy, so I wouldn't call it depression, but the amount of sadness I had for so many reasons. I didn't want to do 3-2 to have a hit record or make $1 million. That just doesn't happen anymore, I did it because my dream was to do a second album with Keith Emerson. And I got to the point where I didn't have to talk him into it. He wanted to do it because he heard how good we were together, Well, that's a badge of honor that internally that I've never put it in those terms, but for me, that's something that will take me to the end of my life with an internal pride that I can't even really, because I'm not that articulate, explain what I mean. But that meant so much to me. It was a validation, I guess, of, wow, Keith wasn't embarrassed by what we did. People made him feel bad, but he said, wow, we were a really good band. In my life, totally dedicated to music since I was in the womb, there's not a bigger badge of honor than the one that Keith Emerson put on my chest right there and then when he said that. And now he's gone. So I didn't want to finish the album that we started on. For 6 months, then I thought, Aaron, his son, is suffering with this. He said to me, he goes, why would Dad do that, Robert? I don't know, Aaron, I was talking to him all the time. He seemed happy to me. I know he had some depression problems in his arm and all, you get things, but we were working on happy stuff. And I said, Aaron, would you consider finishing that album with me? And he got excited. I'd be honored. It'd be great. And I could feel a little healing in that kind of for Aaron too. And I sent him a song. But the only mistake I made my whole life. I've made a lot of them, but I sent him a song called One by One that had this horrendously hard intro for 2 pianos because it's my favorite song on the album. And I was really excited about it. And he called me up and goes, well, I can't play that. That's my dad. He goes, I said, well, Aaron, no one plays like that. Well, there's other stuff. He goes, oh, no, I don't think I better do that. That's my dad's style, and he's playing. I can't play like that. I hung up the phone, and I thought, there's a couple things that hit me. Of course, he can't play like that. And I'm the one that knew what Keith and I had planned on doing. I'm also the one that took lessons from Keith Emerson during the first album, basically, right? Mm-hmm. How we worked, what we cared about, and Oscar Peterson jazz stuff, classical stuff. Well, I got it from an internal way, and Keith had always wanted to call the new album One. He said, we'll call this One, as in his mind, this is really the first 3 album done the way we should do it. And I thought, well, we're going to be 3.2, the second version of the band 3. I said, I can't have an album that says 3.21. And he said, not O-N-E, number 1, right? I thought, it's just not a good album cover, but I thought, we won't talk about that, something's going to come along. And of course, what came along for me is, I'm going to finish this as One, and the rules have changed. And I wrote that song. I said, that's got to be the title. That's how it all came together and got finished.
What inspired the title, The Rules Have Changed?
Everything kind of happened the way it was supposed to happen, I guess, even though it took 27 years and was going to happen. Then all of a sudden, it was just pulled away, and I'm thinking about that part of my life, Keith's life, his family's life, and the world in general. How everybody's kind of mean now. The press, the TV, the whatever it is, it's kind of all on a mean level, and that's changed. It didn't used to be like that, and it was really stems from Keith dying, but it was more of a worldview kind of about that, and looking inward at it, and then outward, and saying that needs to be the title of this album.
What inspired the lyrics to the songs off the 3.2 album, The Rules Have Changed, and we're going to start off with Somebody's Watching.
All these songs had a little bit different lyrics, because we had 5 written before Keith died. After they died, I got to tell you, I didn't consciously write them the way they came out, but they all deal with his death, my feelings. It wasn't really till the album came back and I looked at it and went, oh boy, whoa, this is like way inner stuff coming out. And then the record company wants to put it out, and I'm like, I didn't plan on them putting it out when I finished it, by the way. I just said, I got to finish this. Then it's the day before release, and I'm going, oh, geez, that sort of poured my heart and soul out about how I'm feeling about the world according to Keith Emerson and me, how we fit into it and everything. Somebody's Watching. I felt when I was doing the album that he was right there by me. I'm a black and white, more matter of fact, this is what's going to happen, we're going to make it happen, and if I work hard, I can make it happen. But I'd have these conversations like you or Keith, I'd say, well, Keith, what do you think of that? And I know he'd say, well, no, you got to put that in. Oh, okay. And if he did something that I thought was weird for my vocal, I'd say, well, could we adjust that a little bit for this? And that's just the way we worked. And I have tons of ideas. He had tons of ideas. It was easy, So Somebody's Watching, it really came about me feeling like I was having these conversations as I'm finishing it. And I had to play the keyboards too. He was gone. I couldn't ask somebody else to do an Emerson album and say, well, it needs to be like Keith Emerson. I knew what we were going to do, and I played with them, and I'm a decent keyboard player. I had lots of lessons. So I took it on to do that. Somebody's Watching was how I felt about it.
Your mark on the world.
That wasn't so easy to do. I actually had another friend that died like Keith about 4 months later, Trent Gardner, a band called Magellan. He was a great singer, songwriter, one of the predecessors of kind of the Dream Theater, kind of heavy metal, kind of progressive stuff. And all of a sudden, 4 months later, he leaves us exact same way. I'm going, whoa, this is just really weird. And Trent could make something out of nothing. You give him a bag of chips and he'll make music out of it, kind of. So I said, I'm going to honor his memory in my heart anyway by making this song where I did these harmony clusters of vocals. Just vocals, 4 parts, all these things. And then I chopped them all up, I threw them on the Pro Tools in a certain place, and I wrote a song where it matched those pieces. It was really more about Trent, but of course I did it as if Keith and I were going to honor Trent, like Keith and I had worked on My Way Home on the first album to honor his manager that died at the time. Now the compilation, just me thinking of what everybody would do and how we'd do it.
Tony Stratton Smith. That's right. Okay, so One by One. That's your favorite.
That's my favorite. I didn't know that ELP had a 1 by 1 to begin with. Keith wanted to call the album One. That's where it started with me. He wanted to have this big piano piece that's based on a Norwegian composer, and we talked about it and got going on it. And again, it changed lyrically as I developed these things and started singing them and thinking, well, this means this and this means that. And it's hard for me to explain. They just came out. And part of Somebody's Watching. I was being guided in a way that was probably from my history, with Keith and what we had talked about with the new outline form, all the stuff we wanted to do. But it just flowed out. It was so natural that it's hard for me to say, well, I deliberately sat down and decided I'm going to write a song about this. That's not the way the lyrics happen. It's very unlike me to, I'm not calculated about it, but I say, I want to write a song about the world or about this letter, about love. That was sort of calculated. I got to express this in a way. A lot of it I can't explain.
Powerful Man.
I can explain that one. I actually started writing that when I was working with Sammy Hagar. I just had the Powerful Man line, and I thought, I don't know, I can't really put it all together. When Keith and I were working, and I realized that Aaron was playing, and Keith's grandson that he was afraid to be a granddad about was playing and getting really good. And I was working with Greg Kihn. Ry Kihn's an incredible guitar player. And Steve Howe's son, Dylan, who I met running around throwing popcorn around the living room when he was little, played with us, and he's a great drummer. I'm thinking, these guys were influenced by their dads who were never home. They're on the road all the time, and they still raise great sons. These guys love their dads, respect them, and they raise good sons while being challenged by the world's demands of being a musician, which is not easy. You're out there all the time. You're talking to people, you're entertaining, you have to be at your best. And that's how that came about. It's really about the sons and daughters, but I called it Powerful Man. And these dads that were these great dads. Sammy Hagar, great dad. His son Aaron's a hell of a singer.
Who's the child that's in the video?
You know, my friend Rudy Colombini has a thing in called Music City in San Francisco. It's a breeding ground for young musicians. And he has a band called the Unauthorized Rolling Stones where he's Mick. And his grandson is in there. And it's not a little girl, it's a little boy. He has long hair. He just has such a personality. He said, he's got to be the guy drag in there. And of course, he was 3.5. And with the camera rolling all the light, everything going, did not want to cooperate whatsoever. That's all we got out of like 3 hours of shooting. But it was exactly what it needed.
Compartmentalize what makes Sammy Hagar so great and what influence he had on your life, because that really matured you as a musician too.
Yeah, you know, Sammy, like Carl, dynamo, because Sammy wants to make something happen, he can make it happen. And he's a great guy. Hard to explain. He wants to make tequila business, it's successful. Wants a club, it's successful. Restaurants, successful. He is a guy that everybody feels they could sit down and have a beer with, I think. And he treats people really like that. Hey, buddy, you know, and he calls me Robert Berry. He didn't say, hey, Robert, how you doing? Robert Berry, you know. It's just a kick to watch him at work. I don't know how he keeps it up, to tell you the truth, because he's always just on and happening and still 72. I mean, that's not that old, really. But maybe to be on stage doing The Circle, which was one of my favorite shows. Now, the cool thing for me is that when he does the Van Halen songs, that's me playing keyboards.
Nice.
Yeah, he has me do that, and we pre-record them. And, you know, Jason Bonham puts on the headphones. Another cool thing, when I was recording GTR, Jason, as a little kid, was playing pool in there, and I told Steve Howe, I said, Steve, I have a little trouble with Max. He's harassing me. Who's this kid in here? He goes, oh, that's John Bonham's son. I'll get rid of him. Oh, no, it's okay. Don't get rid of him. No, it's okay. So when Jason became Sammy's drummer for this thing, I took this recording I have of Led Zeppelin in the studio where John Bonham counts off. He goes, 1, 2. So every Van Halen song they play, where the headphones go on and the keyboards come on, Jason hears his dad counting them off. 1, 2, 3. Why can't this be love? So, and he says, man, that was really cool to have my dad count me off each night. Thank you for, it's just something, you know.
Robert, lastly, why should people check out the new 3.2 album?
You know, it is Keith Emerson's last work. It is honestly the deepest, best thing I've ever done. It's very palatable. It's progressive rock in one way. It's very song-oriented in another way. The reviews and everything have been, I hate to even talk about it, they've been so good. You know, it's sold out in 5 countries on the first day by noon. I wasn't expecting it. I did it because I wanted to do another album with Keith Emerson. That's all that mattered to me. Now, maybe nobody would hear it, whatever, you know. That was important. What means the most to me is people pick it up and realize that Keith Emerson still had it. He was still great. He was writing great stuff. He had great ideas. He was a wonderful guy. And because he left us the way he did, he just had this fragile aspect to him that criticism really, really hurt him. And because he had arm operations and stuff, he couldn't play the way he used to. He still played way better than me, you know, and he was so good, and the things he had done, you think, why wasn't that good enough? Well, because people are criticizing him. You know, he just didn't do well with that.
This is the last great masterpiece of Keith Emerson's existence. So here it is, and the cover is beautiful. The colors that you picked for the album cover are impressive. They're positive, and I don't know if you've seen the video, but there's a video on YouTube of a guy getting drunk holding up the new 3.2. Right? Yes, dude. Yes, dude. I watched it.
Fantastic.
Yes, this dude, just like, like some older guy, and he keeps on drinking the beer, and he's holding up the album, listening to it, like, just enjoying it. And I thought about you.
I got to find that. The original artist that did the 3 album, I tracked him down in England. He worked for Cream Magazine or Cream Group, did the new album. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the booklet inside explains every song way better than I can when you ask me about them. It really goes into depth and stuff. And I spent a lot of time on that because I wanted people to know what went into it. But,
well, Robert Berry, you rock, man. Thank you so much for being on the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show.
I appreciate your time. Your energy has been wonderful. You are one organized guy, let me tell you.
This is the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show with Robert Berry signing off.
The Blairing Out show.